Hey guys, I'm IzDaisho and I am here bringing you some Hearthstone, and today I am going to be not giving you a live commentary because I actually recorded this and for some reason the audio didn't work, and I got a little bit tired because yesterday I did the same thing except I didn't get any of the audio, so then I just decided to finish the arena run and it didn't work out anyway. But it's been a while since I posted a video and I do apologize for that. It was kind of unavoidable. I had finals followed by graduation, and it was also my birthday, so there was a lot of celebration and stuff to do. But anyway, without further ado, let's just jump right into this arena run, get back to the old stuff, you know, what we know how to do. So I spent a little bit of time talking about Commanding Shout and how it's an interesting card. When I first started playing the game, I thought it would be one of the better cards, and I thought it was kind of just insane. But it turns out that when your minions are reduced to 1 health, it's very close to like they're dead, so it's not a very powerful card. And then there's also Questing Adventure in the pack, which is an interesting card because it's got like a pretty high variance in that sometimes it's a very, very powerful card and will just win you the game. But the large majority of the time, it's just going to be an average card in your deck, and it's going to be either a 2/2 or a 3/3, a card that you kind of have to make work, and if it doesn't, then, and most of the time they're just going to find a way to kill it, but it is a must answer, so it's definitely a valuable card to put in a deck, if not the best card in the deck. And then finally, there's Upgrade, which is a awesome weapon booster thing, and if you pick it up early on, then you can really get some advantage. You can pick up basically any weapon you see, and then they all become very much better. I mean, if you get 5 or 6 weapons, then it's always going to have a target, and any time that you get to use this to add an extra durability and power to your weapon, you're really going to be benefiting from it. So I do really like Upgrade in a warrior deck, especially at the beginning or at the end after having picked up a lot of weapons. That being said, you kind of always pick up any weapon you see. There are some situations where you wouldn't pick up a weapon, but for the most part you just pick up weapons, so it's not really insane to pick it up early. You'd rather pick it up late after you know you're going to get the weapons rather than early before when you might not be able to get them. Anyway, next pick is between really Loot Hoarder and Ironfur Grizzly, and for me I think the Loot Hoarder is just generally a better card. It has the potential to give you 2-for-1s, and it very rarely loses you advantage. Generally your opponent's going to have to spend 2 mana to deal 1 damage to it, so you're basically trading even on mana and even on cards since they didn't use a card and you didn't use a card. And a lot of the time you can kill a 3/2 with it. You can also just deal damage to one of their other creatures, and then that gives you some advantage, so you lose a little bit on mana, but you do gain some other advantages. So it's definitely a valuable card and something that I'm looking to put in my deck. Ironfur Grizzly is a 3/3 for 3, so it's nothing that can't, it's never going to be terrible. 3/3s for 3 are generally just acceptable no matter what, but you can usually do better, and you usually hope to get some stuff that is a little bit more valuable than that. The fact that it's got taunt isn't too relevant. Generally with my taunters I like to have more toughness than power. This is just a very easy pick. I mean, Arathi Weaponsmith is by far the best card in the pack, plus it gives me weapons for my upgrade. It's just very, very useful, and is really a card that I look to pick up in any warrior deck, and the fact that I was able to get one so early already with an upgrade is very useful. Additionally, the only other card in the pack is Shield Block. Young Dragonhawk does not really exist to me. I mean, that card is so small and insignificant most of the time that I just ignore it. But yeah, so the only other real card in the pack is Shield Block, and Shield Block is just not that good. I mean, you're gaining 5 armor for 3 mana, and then you're just drawing a card, so you basically lose a lot of tempo advantage even if you do gain a little bit, because I mean, paying 3 mana for 5 armor, if that was just another hero ability, like you had your 2 mana, your 2 armor for 2 mana and your 3 armor, or your 3 mana for 5 armor, you would do that a lot. But I don't know, whatever, that's not the point. Here is the next card and the next pick, and this one's actually a pretty important pick. I think it really sort of breaks a lot of ties in my draft, so I decided to go with the Warsong Commander over the Direwolf Alpha. I think that they're pretty equal on power level. Warsong Commander's a little bit more swingy in that sometimes a 2/3 for 3 just loses you card advantage because they just eat it with their 3-drop, but other times you can play it in the mid to late game and then you just get a lot of advantage out of it. But yeah, there's definitely situations throughout this draft where I talk about how cards are good with Warsong Commander, and that's not a reason why I'm gonna take a card over another card just because it might interact well with one card in my deck, but it is a reason why I might actually break ties with it. So if there are 2 cards that are very, very close, then I'm going to end up taking the one that can synergize well with the rest of my deck. So in this situation, if I have the choice between, I think at some point maybe, well, I don't know. Anyway, like a Fen Creeper and like a Dark Scale Healer. So normally that's a pretty close pick for me. Usually Fen Creeper would win, but in this one it's just very easy if Fen Creeper would win. So here there are 3 bad cards in the pack. Dread Corsair is kind of the least bad, and additionally it synergizes well with my weapons. It also works well with Warsong Commander. So it's definitely a card that I don't hate, but as I said before, 3/3 taunts for 3 are not that good, and this guy can cost even more than that sometimes, but he can also be free if you have an Arcanite Reaper out. So I'm pretty happy to take it. Anyway, Charge and Elven Archer are just cards that I'm not a fan of. I mean, pretty much, I was talking about it in the draft, there are basically 3 1-drops that I'm willing to draft that are common, which is just going to be Elven Archer, Argent Squire, and Worgen Infiltrator, and those are all because they can actually do more than just die to like a hero ability, because the Worgen Infiltrator can stay stealthed until you can actually trade. The Elven Archer can deal damage when it comes down, and the Argent Squire can take 2 hits. So those are the only 3 that I'm really willing to play. I mean, I'll play a Young Priestess. I'll even play a Leper Gnome if I have to, but those are the only 3 that I'm like even remotely willing to play, and I don't even like any of them. So basically, anytime I get to pick a Chillwind Yeti is a pretty easy pick. I mean, that card is awesome. These other 2 cards in this pack, though, the reason why Chillwind Yeti is so awesome is really hard to tell, and I was thinking about it earlier, especially comparing it to like Magic. Sure, a 4-mana 4/5 would be a very high pick, and it would be a good card, but it wouldn't be quite as powerful. It wouldn't just be like the best card in the set, but it also is different because, anyway, the point is, if you add 1 toughness to a thing in Magic the Gathering, it doesn't make it leagues above every other card that's similar to it. Even other cards like Ogre Magi, which is 4/4 with a relevant upside, and Chillwind Yeti is just so much better. And the reason for it is because there is no 3-drop that just trades 1-for-1 with Chillwind Yeti. I mean, I guess Scarlet Crusader kind of, but that takes like a couple of turns, so it doesn't really make any sense. I don't know. Generally, what ends up happening is that Chillwind Yeti gets to kill your opponent's 2 and their 3-drop, or even a 2-drop and a 4-drop. I mean, that's just not uncommon for it to do that. So basically, the potential for it to get 2-for-1s and then still always be relevant throughout the game makes Chillwind Yeti such a powerful card. There I took Novice Engineer. I don't really know how many weapons I'm going to pick up. I already have 2 Weaponsmiths and an Arcanite Reaper, but still, I'm not even happy to ever play Dread Corsair. Even if I get to play it for free, it's just not always going to be like that, so I don't really like it. But yeah, anyway, Gorehowl is the best, obviously the best epic for my deck. I mean, I'd be happy with like a CGI also, but yeah. Here's a really interesting pick. So all these 3 cards are actually pretty decent. I don't think I really want a Cult Master since I don't have too much early game yet. I could pick some up. I'm only a third of the way through the draft, but it's definitely not something that I really want to choose just yet. And Dark Iron Dwarf is actually pretty good in this kind of deck because of the 2 and 3 drops that I do, or the 2 drops I guess I do have, both of them are weak on their own, but if you pump them, then they get really, really powerful. And then also there's an Acolyte of Pain in this deck, or in this pack, and I kind of do want more early game, and this guy is a good way for me to still use my mana in the early game and at least get some card advantage even if I'm losing out on a little bit of tempo. So I don't even remember what I choose. I think I end up choosing the Acolyte of Pain, but this is a really tough decision, and looking back on it, I don't even know. I think I'd probably take the Dark Iron Dwarf and just really prioritize early game for the rest of the draft because it's a lot of 4-drops already, and that's I ended up taking the Acolyte of Pain. I thought I did, but yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that I really try and focus on in these drafts, is to make sure that my curve is good above all else. Usually the first 10 to 12 picks are kind of flexible. I'll take the best card. It's very similar to Magic, but then after that I'm going to focus almost entirely on the curve and that kind of thing. Make sure that my deck runs smoothly every game, not just has powerful spikes in it, because if you want to get to even 7 wins, you have to have a 67%, or even 6 wins is a 67% win percentage. 7 wins is like almost 70 or something like that. So if you want to have that high of a win percentage, you can't just concede some games. You have to be do powerful things every game, or at least do consistently powerful things. So just doing powerful things in some games is not going to win you, and it's not going to win you enough games. It'll win you some games, but not enough to have as high of a win percentage as I really want to. But anyway, Tauren Warrior is never really a consideration. The fact that it's a 2/3 for 3 and barely has any relevant abilities is not good enough. And here, this is the pick that I was talking about. It ended up really, I mean, Fen Creeper has some synergy with Warsong, but I think I like Fen Creeper better than Healer anyway. And now it just has to do with, do I want an Execute or a Fen Creeper? And that's actually a pretty tough decision. I usually do like to pick up one Execute in the draft, and I'm almost halfway done, so I'm only going to have another 10, 12 shots at it, depending on how many rares I get. But yeah, it's a really tough decision here, and I think I end up taking the Fen Creeper because I have a lot of weapons, and I know I'm going to be low on life, so tossing up some Taunters is usually pretty good, especially protects you against Wolf Riders and Arcane Golems or whatever people are doing these days, even Reckless Rocketeers and that kind of thing. It definitely does some work against that. So I'm going to pick up a Direwolf Alpha because I do need some early game. Acolyted Pain's okay, but it's not very good. Okay, so I'm trying to pick up 2 and 3 drops so that I don't lose out on tempo. I can make it back on cards since I have weapons and I have upgrade and I have some powerful cards and like Chill and Yeti or Avi Weaponsmith. Those kind of things can get me back on card advantage, but what I want to make sure is that I don't fall too far behind on the board. So I don't want my opponent to have multiple creatures out with me when I have nothing. And in those kind of situations, what your opponent can do is they can just trade favorably. They can play stuff like Shattered Sun Cleric from the hand to make the trades math work out perfectly for them and horribly for you. So generally, you really want to make sure you don't fall behind on tempo because that can definitely hurt. So I just went through a brief little explanation of what I think tempo is and how I describe it because it's a very complicated and subjective thing. But anyway, Big Game Hunter versus South Sea Captain. I don't really like Molten Giant at all. I know that I can sort of control my life total with my weapons, but a lot of the time you're just put in the awkward position of do I armor up or do I not armor up because I can't cast my Molten Giant, and then by the time you can cast it, your opponent's already got control of the board, and then you cast it and you're dying in 1 or 2 turns, so it usually doesn't work. So I only have 1 pirate for my South Sea Captain. If I had taken the other Dread Corsair, I would actually consider it. I mean, it depends how many pirates you have in your deck, but there is a certain amount of pirates that you can get where it would be worth taking the Pirate Lord, especially since he's a 3/3 for 3. And Big Game Hunter sometimes comes up, but a lot of the time his ability is irrelevant. Anyway, the next pack is not very good. Don't like any of these cards very much, but I just take the early game card. And here I got a Legend. It's always nice to see a Legend pop up in the arena. And I got 2 choices here that are actually pretty good. So I've got something like 3 weapons so far. Oh, 4 weapons if you include Gorehowl. Though it's hard to include Gorehowl in my estimation of what's going on in this game because if you get your Gorehowl and you're not just completely dead right away, the 1 extra durability won't really do that much. You're just going to kill them anyway with the Gorehowl. When you play Gorehowl, you either get Acidic Swamp Oozed, you win the game, or your opponent just barely manages to kill you even though you have control of the board. And they barely manage to kill your life total. So Captain Greenskin doesn't really help with that. It really does help with Arcanite Reaper, though, and Arathi Weaponsmith's weapon. But I end up going with the Hogger because I think it synergizes really well with weapons because you can just play Hogger and then you protect it with your weapons, which is just another thing. So you can play an Arcanite Reaper or a Gorehowl, then play your Hogger, and that protects your life total. And as long as you can keep the Hogger alive, your opponent's going to have real trouble killing you. So I end up taking the War Golem there because I wanted some late game. I don't have too much on 6 and 7. I had that 1 Hogger that I just picked up on the Gorehowl. And we're winding down this draft, so I really need to fill out the top of my curve to make sure that once we get to the late game, I can still kill my opponent. And this is really just a preferential pick. All these 3 cards are very good. I think they're about even on power level. I think Harvest Golem might be the best, but it also might be Dark Iron Dwarf. It's hard to tell. Depends how much Mage there is running around. Sometimes it seems like every single deck your opponents are playing as Mage, and sometimes it seems like you haven't seen it in about 2 drafts or something like that. I think I've played against 1 Mage in the last 2 arena runs that I've done. Anyway, I think I'm going to go ahead and take the Dark Iron Dwarf here. I don't have too many 4s. It sort of looks like I have more than I do because the Dread Corsair doesn't really count. Yeah, this is just garbage pack. I don't want any of these cards. Whirlwind is okay. Like sometimes it can shore up your lack of mass removal because that is definitely an issue for Warrior. I mean, just the ability to clear your opponent's side of the board when they've pushed ahead on tempo is very, very important, and Warrior can't really do that. So Whirlwind is sometimes like a makeshift sweeper, even though it only does 1 damage. Sometimes you can get enough advantage out of it. But I end up going with the Reckless Rocketeer. I don't have too much on the top end, and I do like the fact that I can close out games with it. So Yeah, anyway, this is one of those tiebreaker picks. I think Emperor Cobra and Demolisher are about as good as each other, but Cobra has a lot more synergy, and yeah, here I just kind of got tired of explaining my thoughts, I guess, but none of these cards are very good. Flesh-Eating Ghoul's fine, but I think I'd rather just have the Stormpike. Stormpike's an okay card. I mean, it's not good. Nobody's going to ever argue that it's good. But yeah, another weapon is nice. And then here, I kind of regret taking the 5-drop. I would have rather had another 3-drop because now I'm getting a little bit too top-heavy. But that's alright. And then here, I get an Easy Sea Giant. Oh, actually, I have 2 more picks after. I thought this was the last one now. Okay, so yeah, Easy Sea Giant. The other 2 are not very good. I mean, Faceless is fine, but it's also an inexpensive card. Doomsayer is not very good, even though it sort of seems like it's a sweeper. It's just not very good. A lot of times it either gets silenced, just killed right away. Sometimes what happens is it just like 1-for-1s or 2-for-1s or something like that, and also puts you ahead on tempo. Usually you're going to be even on cards, but the fact that you can play the first minion is usually pretty nice. And right here, I don't want another expensive card, so I'm happy to take a Cleave. It does shore up the lack of board sweepers a little bit, in that you can kill 2 minions with it. The annoying thing is I didn't get any Fiery War Axes in this deck. And then finally, the last pick is going to be an Easy Stampeding Kodo, because that is by far the best card in the pack. So that was the draft. I think it ended up okay. It didn't end up being the greatest arena run I have ever done, but it's got a good curve, or a reasonable curve, probably a little bit too top-heavy. But it ended up with a reasonable amount of 2-drops and 3-drops, and it's got some powerful and card advantage generating spells, as well as a legend and a really, really good epic. Arguably one of the best cards in the arena in Gorehowl. I mean, there are probably some legends like Ragnaros or even Ysera that just do so much work in the arena and win you the game such a high percentage time you cast them. But Gorehowl is definitely a really, really tough card to beat. And, of course, since I said that I haven't seen a mage in a while, we're going to play a mage first round. That's alright. I mean, as long as you got everything down pat, you're going to be alright. So I'm going to leave the Novice Engineer in my opener. I do want to make sure that I have something positive to do on turn 2, I guess. And since I have a lot of good cards in my deck, I don't mind cycling. And if it just trades for his 2 mana, then I'm very happy, because then I'm going to be at least equal on tempo. He might play a creature on turn 2 and then kill it on turn 3 or something like that. I don't know. But this is a pretty bad hand. I mean, I've got 2 mediocre cards in Dread Corsair and War Golem to start out, and also having a 7-drop and a 5-drop in your opener is bad. But that's going to be something that I'm going to have to contend with this draft. There are a lot of expensive cards, and I really need to make sure that I don't have too many. So my opponent's just going to play a Mirror Image here, and that's not so bad for me. I mean, I've got this Cleave, so I can take those guys down whenever I want. Additionally, I mean, Mirror Image just buys you time and allows your creatures to trade favorably with your opponents, but it's not worth a card. I mean, you're not gaining any advantage in terms of killing your opponent or killing your opponent's creatures. So he's not going to do anything on turn 1, 2, or 3, really. I mean, he played those 2 guys, but again, not very relevant. Fortunately for me, I managed to draw an Emperor Cobra, so I had a 3-drop to play, because I was a little bit worried about what I would do. It's very important for the warrior to actually spend his mana efficiently in the early game, because its hero ability does not affect the board at all. Alright, so my opponent's going to drop a Spellbreaker here, which isn't great for me, but to be honest, is really not that bad for me either. I'm going to go ahead and just coin out, coin out a Silver Hand Knight here. It's not the greatest play, but what I'm hoping is that I can actually play the Sea Giant next turn. What's likely ends up happening is that my opponent kills my Emperor Cobra and then plays a minion, and then I can play a Sea Giant. If he's got a Frostbolt or something like that, then that can change things, and then he can end up killing 2 of my guys. But either way, my opponent ends up just attacking my face, and I was utterly shocked by that. But anyway, this next turn coming up is really good for me, because you just got to make sure you play with the Sea Giant correctly. But yeah, I can play the Razorfen Hunter. It'll summon 2 minions, and then the Sea Giant will only cost 2 mana, so I can actually do both of those this turn. And I can actually trade pretty favorably with his side of the board, because I can just go ahead and kill the 0/2 with the Emperor Cobra, so I still have a 2/3 left over, and then trade off with the water elemental. I want to keep my sea giant pretty much as high health as possible. We're getting near the point where my opponent can flame strike. It's only turn 6 now, but next turn my opponent will be able to flame strike. So I want to make sure that my sea giant will actually survive flame strike, even if all my other minions don't. So since, I mean, even though it didn't exactly trade my Silverhand Knight for his water elemental, it was actually pretty good for me because my opponent ended up spending 4 mana on the water elemental and 2 on the ping. So he ended up basically spending 6 mana and some extra resources because he had to use the hero ability on that and he couldn't use it on the boar. Whereas I only spent 5 mana. So that actually definitely provided me with some advantage. And this turn was just absurdly, atrociously bad for my opponent. The fact that he couldn't do anything, all he did was draw cards, means that I just get to put more stuff on the board, deal a ton of damage to him, and trade favorably. For some reason he didn't hit one of my minions. It doesn't really matter, it ended up working out for me, but I still got to use all my mana this turn. I didn't really want to commit anything else to the board. I don't usually like to get more than 3 for 1, and right here I'm just getting 2 for 1 by it. I'm losing the Emperor Cobra and the Direwolf Alpha, and I guess part of the Razorfin Hunter, but the Razorfin Hunter traded favorably already. I still get to keep my Sea Giant, and my novice or my Loot Hoarder is going to draw me a card. So even on mana, it's even. I spent 7 mana on the stuff that he killed, and he spent 7 mana on to kill them all. I guess it's slightly more since he got to kill the Sea Giant as well, but yeah, I'm going to be able to just drop a War Golem here, and now I don't even have to worry about second Flame Strike or whatever. I also have a Gore Howl and an Arcanite Reaper in hand. So this game is definitely looking up for me. I can't really imagine any combination of cards that my opponent would have to have here to win the game. He could survive a few more turns, but especially because I have this Arcanite Reaper and the Gore Howl in hand, it's going to be a really, really tough play. And I think I do a bit of a... I guess a bit of a dick move this turn, but I do want to point out that the more actions you do, the more attacks you do, the more minions you kill, the more experience you get. And it's very, very minor, but if you do play more things out, then you actually get a little bit more experience. So anyway, I also really wanted to do this because it was fun. So I played an Arcanite Reaper, then a Warsong Commander, and then I can actually attack with my my Taunt Dude. Probably should have just traded for the 3/3 if I really was trying to get more experience. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. I try and get another gameplay. Ooh, Golden Arcanite Reaper, level 51. I really just want to get my Golden Chillwind Yeti already. I think it's like level 56 or 57 or something. I don't know. But I want my Golden Chillwind Yetis. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I try and get another game here, but for some reason it just glitches out and I decided that it was not meant to be. But I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. Bye.